Selamat siang. Welcome to another Bali COVID-19 update. It is Sunday, October 10th, and there is a lot to talk about today. And as usual, a lot of stuff that I've left out just because there's so much here. And tomorrow, there's going to be no announcement about the restrictions because the restrictions are for 2 weeks, right, last time. But the 14th is coming up, and so everybody is waiting to see if there are going to be more details announced about how the 14th is going to be handled. Are there going to be planes coming in from anywhere? What is going to happen with the quarantine? Is the quarantine going to be dropped down to 5 days or 2 days? And how about quarantine hotels? So there's 35. Is there an official price list out? So the numbers continue to look good, and so let's take a look at the numbers first. And the numbers are looking really good again. And what are they? 7-day average for new positive cases is down to 60, and 7-day average for deaths down to 4. And what about nationally? New positive cases 1,167 and deaths 52. And let's look at numbers tested nationally. 182,910 with a 0.64 positive rate, and the 7-day average positivity rate is 0.73. Wow, okay. And what about in Bali? Bali tested in the past 7 days 45,725 people and gave us an achievement rate of 166.12%. The 7-day positivity rate, 1.03%. Okay, looking better and better all the time. And what about vaccination numbers, those all-important vaccination numbers? First dose, 3,364,003, and that's 75.3% of the population. Second dose, or fully vaxxed, 2,801,918, 62.7% of the population. And if you see numbers, and you do in the press reports, and it says 90%, 95%, 85%, those are numbers on the target. Those are not the numbers on the total population. What are the target? Well, the target is maybe 12 and up, but it's not really clear exactly what the target is. Anyway, these numbers are based on the population statistics, not on the target. So these numbers are a little lower than what you generally see in the press and what the government talks about usually, but these are what you look at if you want to talk about herd immunity, that famous herd immunity. And yesterday, 42,153 additional doses. And in terms of vaccinations, take a look at the foreigners behaving badly if you want to hear some really terrible stuff about what foreigners are doing in terms of vaccinations here. Very disappointing, very depressing, very upsetting. Okay, and what about our numbers in Bali yesterday? New positive cases, 38. Recovery, 64. And deaths, 5. Active cases, 764. So, what can we say? Things are looking good with the numbers. And vaccinations continue. They're ongoing, and our numbers are going up in terms of vaccinated population. And at this point, the government obviously sees that we have enough people vaccinated to start bringing in foreign tourists. More about that coming up. So let's talk about how Bali is preparing for opening and the important issue of quarantine, because this 8-day quarantine is going to put a kibosh on a lot of people's vacations. From what I hear from my friends, just anecdotal, nothing statistical. But when I've talked to people around Asia, friends of mine in Japan, in China, Taiwan, Singapore, Korea, they say, yeah, I'd love to come to Bali, but I'm not doing 8-day quarantine. Sorry, I just don't have the time. And so we'll talk about that coming up. Let's say that you're flying into Jakarta, because we don't know when Bali International Airport is going to be open for everybody. Right? The plan is on the 14th to open it up to 6 countries, but let's see what happens on the 14th. Anyway, AirAsia is reopening flights to Bali starting October 14th from Jakarta. Now, AirAsia stopped those flights at the time that the government declared the restrictions, the PPKM, and so AirAsia canceled their flights, and they are going to be starting up on October 14th. So there will be round-trip Jakarta-Bali flights starting on the 14th, a frequency of 4 times a week. According to AirAsia's president-director, the company will provide 15 kilograms of free baggage and COVID-19 PCR test services at low rates, starting from $390,000 in Jakarta and $385,000 in Bali. And rapid tests will also be available at affordable prices, $35,000 in Jakarta and $85,000 in Bali. Why is Bali more expensive than Jakarta? Can somebody explain it to me? And AirAsia appealed to all customers willing to travel to comply with all the predetermined health protocols as directed by the government, check travel requirements, and maintain hygiene. Okay, they don't want to see what's happened in the U.S. with all these people not wearing masks and punching flight attendants and doing all sorts of crazy stuff, which we don't need here. And so if you're flying into Jakarta, you can take AirAsia starting on the 14th to Bali. Okay, and yeah, I've flown AirAsia many times, and yeah, it's a budget airline. I'm quite comfortable with it. And what about tourist numbers? So, ministry aims to double foreign tourist arrivals, but experts remain wary. So the government is planning on doubling forest tourist arrivals in 2022 by opening up new travel corridors, but experts express doubt, saying that the pandemic is still going to be a shadow over the sunshine of opening up. According to a presentation from our old friend, Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy, Pak Sandiaga Uno, who, by the way, is going to be present virtually at my youngest daughter's graduation in a few weeks. Just heard about that today. She said it's being delayed. Why? Because Pak Uno can't come then, and so we're going to have it at a later date. Just letting you know, Dad. Okay. And so what did Pak Sandiaga Uno say? He said that the ministry is hoping to welcome 3.6 million international visitors in 2022, higher than the projected 1.5 for this year. And the ministry projects 280 million local tourist trips in 2022, almost the same as from the pre-pandemic level of 282.9 million in 2019. However, there's always a but and a however in these stories, right? And thank goodness for people that throw a little doubt onto some of these wild plans and claims coming from some of the government ministries. The Indonesian Tourism and Intellectuals Association, well, this sounds like an interesting group. The chairman, Azriel Azahari, said that they want to revive local tourism, and that's definitely achievable, but that government's figures for international tourism, he thinks, are too high. He said the government needs to be more innovative and offer new attractions such as health and wellness-based tourism packages and focusing on attracting high-spending and long-staying tourists. We've heard this before. He said the government should focus on quality tourists and not so much on the number of tourists, right? And so this is being said many different ways. The most unfortunate way was in Badung, it said no backpackers. But they're looking for tourists that have money and that are going to be here for a while. Okay, that makes sense. Is that going to happen? Well, we'll hope so. According to this article, there were 937,747 foreign tourists during the period January to July this year, down 71% from the previous year of 3.28 million during that period. And the decline in tourist numbers contributed to the drop in foreign exchange by 80%. And the article says the sector's contribution to the country's gross domestic product also declined to 4% from 4.97% in 2019. Foreign Affairs Deputy Minister Mahendra Siregar said that Indonesia is in talks with several countries, Australia, Hungary, Hong Kong, Malaysia. Hong Kong's not really a country. And the Netherlands to talk about travel corridors. He said, when we settle travel corridors, or travel bubble arrangements, then we can make the quarantine optional, because we've considered the health conditions and the standard of country of origin to be in as good a shape as Indonesia's. That would bring people in if you have no quarantine and you've got this travel bubble between these countries. Osro said that removing the quarantine is dangerous because it might create new COVID-19 clusters. He suggested instead that tourists be given the option to self-isolate in hotels or resorts. Here is another plan. So we've got the quarantine, 8 days, 5 days, 2 days, no quarantine for travel bubble countries, and here is one, self-isolate in hotels or resorts. Now, could you self-isolate in a resort and go out into the resort area, hang around in the pool, go to the gym, massages, whatever is there? Would that be possible? Okay. Would that bring in people? Yeah, maybe. People that like those kind of vacations anyway. The chairwoman of the Association of Air Ticketing Companies in Indonesia, Pauline Suharno, said that Bali's reopening will help spur foreign tourist arrivals in Indonesia, but that the government should still impose strict border controls for incoming tourists. She said, and she's another one, said that the government should focus on mid to high-end tourists, including business travelers, as they are most likely demographic to spend money. And so everybody seems to agree, let's get people in here with more money and get them to spend it and stay a little longer. So let's talk about the October 14th date. What's happening about that? So the Badung Regional Tourism Promotion Agency, BPPD, is promoting Bali to 7 countries that have low risk of COVID-19 transmission. And the head of the BPPD, I Gusti Agung Rai Surawijaya, said that his party has carried this out in order to promote Bali in anticipation of the opening on the 14th. This promotion is done through webinars, and the BPPD is talking to 7 countries, although the original notification was 6 countries, and well, who knows how that's going to work out. So the 7 countries that have been invited to the webinars: France, South Korea, the UAE, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, China, and New Zealand. And he said he hopes that there'll be intergovernmental cooperation because, he said, in order for foreign tourists to arrive, they have to be given permission to leave their country, right? And that was something that was not really talked about the other day by Pak Luhut. He said, so every country must provide support. If we are the only ones who open the entrance while they're still in lockdown or still closing, it can't be done. Yes, that's right. He also said that in order to welcome new people to Bali, everything is being taken care of, including the CHSE, which so far, from people that I've read remarks from, comments from here, most people don't really care about that. But it's a big deal for the government. And so he said hotels and restaurants are well prepared, they're getting their certificates, and additionally they're making sure that all the employees have received full doses of COVID-19 vaccinations. And he warned, as many people have already mentioned before, many government officials already mentioned before, the opening is temporary, it's being taken slowly because we don't want unwanted things to happen. He said, because once you open Bali, it must be a goal. Don't open the lid, open and close. In other words, this is a translation. In other words, we don't want to open up and then have something happen and we're going to have to close down again. So with the plan on opening Bali to international flights on the 14th, there's been a lot of activity going on. And so this article, international flights will open soon. 300,000 tourists are already queuing for vacation to Bali. According to Inyoman Yuarta, the chairman of the Bali Indonesian Tour Guides Association, all the tour guide association workers in Bali are ready to go, and 90% have been fully vaxxed. The remaining 10% have some kind of problems, and so they're not able to get vaccinated. And he said things are ready for tourists from China, Korea, and Japan. And these preparations have been taking place during the pandemic, and once things open on the 14th, they are going to be ready to go. However, he noted that the 8-day quarantine period has resulted in cancellations for tourists from Japan, China, and Korea. He claimed that tourists from those countries rarely stay more than 5 days, and so there's no time for them to come here, be in quarantine, and have a vacation. And I've already talked about this in the last video. He said that the quarantine shouldn't be more than 2 days because he thinks the tourists who come who are fully vaccinated and test negative for the virus should be allowed to travel around Bali wherever they'd like. He noted that despite not having heavy promotion for tourism, there's already a large waiting list of people coming, and he claims nearly 300,000 tourists are waiting to get in. I don't know where he got those figures. That's a lot of people. And he concluded by saying that he hopes the government makes regulations that will favor the market. In the last video, I had a link to the procedures at the airport, what's going to happen for people as they fly in internationally into Bali. And I don't know if people read that, if they went through that, kind of followed that whole diagram and things. But here's an article, Complete Rules for Foreign Tourists Who Want to Enter Indonesia. And so the president director of Angkasa Pura I said that they are ready to accommodate foreign tourists in line with the government policy. And he said that there are several things that tourists are going to need to remember, take into account when they come. The process is going to take about an hour or so. What he says here in this article, including waiting for test results, it's going to take an hour and 12 minutes. And as I go through this, listen carefully and see if you think this is going to take an hour and 12 minutes, because I've been through this airport many times over the last 32 years. And getting out quickly has happened to me sometimes, but other times, boy, long times, especially at immigration and customs as well. Regarding the readiness of the PCR test, the airport is going to cooperate with Bali's Jimbaran Hospital and have 2 mobile lab facilities, 20 PCR booths, 10 PCR machines with a capacity of 320 tests per hour and a total capacity per day of as many as 3,840 tests. And the airport will ensure that incoming tourists comply with rules such as quarantine of a minimum of 8 days, showing proof of quarantine hotel reservations, and getting the negative test. And are they going to be doing social distancing when people come in? Think back to when you last came into Bali. Last time I came into Bali was, well, I think 3 years ago now. And because I have a key top, I went through real quickly. It took me about 2 minutes, but I was looking over at the line of people coming in on VOAs, waiting at immigration counter, and they were packed in like sardines. So how is that going to work out? So let's take a look at how things are going to work. Pre-flight. So before coming to Bali, foreign tourists have to have prepared proof of a complete dose of vaccine, 3 times 24-hour PCR test, fill out a health alert card, have quarantine hotel booking documents, fill out PCR, confirm immigration documents, fill out electronic customs declaration. Those are all things you've got to do before flight. Now, what happens when you get here? So there are 10 more steps that you have to go through. First, thermal scanners. So when you arrive, you will go to the arrival terminal and you'll have your body temperature checked. If your body temperature is 38 or below, you can go on. If your body temperature is above 38 degrees, you will be taken to an examination room and checked again, and if you're healthy, you can go on. If you're not healthy, you're going to be sent to a hospital. Then the registration counter. At the registration counter, the COVID-19 task force people will be carrying out data control and print out barcodes. There are 10 counters with a registration process time of about 10 minutes per tourist. Next, inspection of health documents in quarantine hotels. This will be carried out by the Port Health Office and barcode tapping with a processing time at the KKP counter, that's the Port Health Office counter, of about 1 minute. And the PCR swab comes next. And there will be 20 booths doing that, and sampling process time of about 1.5 minutes. Then to immigration, where your documents will be examined by an immigration officer, and there's going to be 16 counters open. Well, I've never seen 16 counters open. That's going to be new. And that's going to take a processing time of about 1 minute. Now, even when I've gone through fast, 1 minute for processing through immigration, I'm very doubtful about that. And baggage collection next. So you're going to go to a conveyor belt. There'll be 7 conveyor belts and a processing time of 1 minute. These time limits sound really unrealistic. And then you will have scanning electronic customs declaration barcode with a processing time of 0.16 minutes. And then you go to a holding area and you'll wait for your results of your PCR test, and data collection will be carried out by the quarantine hotel with a processing time of 60 minutes. Then you go to the provincial COVID-19 task force desk. Tourists tap barcodes, and the provincial COVID-19 task force carries out access control, and then you go to the pickup area where you're picked up and taken to the quarantine hotel. It sounds like they got the process down, but the amount of time that this is going to take sounds pretty optimistic. And more on what things are going to look like when we get open. The Deputy Mayor of Denpasar supports Bali Ideathon research again. And so in order to prepare Bali to be free from COVID-19, ITB Stickcom Bali won the trust of the National Disaster Management Agency to conduct research. And this is in collaboration with Bamboo Media to implement a QR code-based application to track the mobility of Denpasar residents. Okay, so they're going to be tracking people. Why are they going to be tracking people? They're going to be tracking people to see who's sick and where they've been. The head of Ideathon Research, Evie Triandini, said that the special QR-based code shows if a person is confirmed positive for COVID-19 and they go to a crowded center and make close contact with people, the person's data will automatically be recorded in big data. And the big data immediately releases accurate information about how many people have been exposed from one crowd to the COVID-19 task force. The idea is that this mechanism will be installed in all places where public crowds are possible. So with the special application based on the QR code and big data, the COVID-19 task force will be able to obtain accurate information about the number of people that have been exposed and who they've interacted with, and those people will receive a notification so that authorities can check their health conditions. And the mayor of Denpasar expressed his appreciation for the research conducted by ITB Stickcom Bali, and said that it is a great idea for tracing and tracking public mobility based on QR codes, and that this will help with the opening of Bali. And more on what Bali is going to look like when it opens. So President Jokowi was in Bali on Friday. While he was here, he met with a number of Bali's regional leaders at the governor's office, and he asked that tracing and testing be increased after Bali opens for tourism. And the president said that it's necessary to show that Bali is handling the COVID situation, and that he heard from the deputy governor that most of Bali's population has already been completely vaccinated. Well, that's not exactly true. The numbers are definitely up there, but not as high as in this article. And I think this is another article that is using numbers that are based on the target, not on the total population. The president asked that testing be shown on a curve which shows a red color so that it can be immediately addressed problems. And he said that, as an example, testing in Bangli and Karangasem are too low. Bangli at 57%, according to this article, and Karangasem at 34%. And he said it's just this small little thing that really needs to be touched up. And he gave a hint of what's to come. He said that the Minister of Tourism and the coordinating minister, that's Pak Sandiaga Uno and Pak Luhut, agreed together on how the quarantine concept for all foreign tourists has been completed, and that they are going to convey it to the governor and the mayor sometime soon, I hope. Maybe the three, President Jokowi, Pak Sandiaga Uno, and Pak Luhut, have decided how they're going to deal with the quarantine question. Is it going to be reduced to 5 days? I don't know. This is Saturday, and so tomorrow is the upload day for this. Maybe there'll be news by tomorrow. What about the Kuta Beach situation? Remember in a previous video I was talking about Kuta Beach, the entrances, some of them being closed, the majority of them being closed, in order to more easily maintain COVID security. 17 access points have been permanently closed using bricks. It looked like they were using batako. And this caused some protest from local sellers on the beach who said their stalls were right at the closed entrances. The Bendesa.Kuta Iwan Wasista said, yes, it's true, a number of entrances had been closed, but it was not done to interfere with the seller's business. He said that it had been done in order to make it easier to implement the Padula Lingduni app. And he added that he had already socialized this before they'd gone about bricking up the entrances. And he said that the distance from one door to another is not more than 100 meters. So there's some disagreement there. Sellers don't like having their businesses interfered with in any way, and the authorities in Kuta have to do that in order to more easily control the influx of tourists, which is only supposed to be 8,000 on Kuta Beach. And he said visitors that come to Kuta Beach have to apply 3M, wash their hands, wear a mask, and keep social distancing. And don't forget to scan the barcode when entering the beach area. Anybody been down to Kuta? And if you have been, leave a comment below so we know what's happening there. And so more on quarantine, because of course the quarantine is a huge issue. That 8-day quarantine is generally agreed on being a block to people coming in, even if the airport is opened up for international travelers. And so this article, government plans to reduce quarantine period for overseas travelers to 5 days. According to the Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs, Arya Hartanto, the government has been talking about reducing the quarantine to 5 days, and this was done at a limited meeting with the president and a number of related ministers. He's quoted as saying, this is what we are still preparing. It's been decided that it will be open in the meeting discussing the quarantine period. With this situation, it will be closed and its position will be 5 days. Okay, so this is another minister saying something. Nothing has been decided yet. When is this meeting going to take place? I'm not sure. Just because it's reported in the press that this is going to happen doesn't mean that it will. And so news like this gets out and then it spreads all over social media and people are convinced that it's going to happen. It may happen. And in order to do this, it's just not the ministers and the president. You have to bring in the National Disaster Management Agency, the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Ministry of Transportation, and, well, the Ministry of Health put a kibosh on the reducing the quarantine from 8 days to 2 days last time this was brought up. And they're also considering what to do about the island of Rio. Arlanga said regarding mobility and seeing the situation on islands such as Bali and in Rio Islands with a level of drop, we are asked to be prepared to open it. And so there's a move to open up some areas in the western part for tourism to come in from Singapore, like Badung. So we're just waiting to see. So there's a big push to drop the quarantine level. Is that going to happen? Are we going to go from 8 days to 5 days or 8 days to 2 days? And will that make a difference? According to what I'm hearing and talking to my friends in Asia, when they heard about an 8-day quarantine, they said, forget it. I'd like to come to Bali, but well, I get 2 weeks vacation. I'm not going to spend 8 days in a hotel quarantine. And so that's not going to work, it looks like. Will 5 days make a difference? I don't know. Would 2 days make a difference? And then there's some countries that are going down to 0 quarantine. Look, let's be honest about this. This is going to be a competition. You've got all these countries in Asia competing for tourists, especially Thailand and Malaysia and Bali and, well, Bali's not a country. The Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia. There's a lot of places to go. And the countries that offer the safest, most convenient, easiest travel are the ones that are going to come out on top. And more on the quarantine. 35 quarantine hotels welcome foreigners in Bali. Rates start at Indonesian rupiah 10 million. So hotels are being prepared from 3 stars to 5 stars, according to the Deputy Head of Culture, Environment, and Public Relations at PHRE Bali, I Gusti Nura Rai Surawijaya. And he said that there are 35 hotels in the first phase, but a second phase will include 62 hotels, 62 more hotels. He said that the hotels are ready to go, and that many hotels are competing to become quarantine hotels. However, he noted that there are consequences if you were picked to be a quarantine hotel. And what are they? He said, if quarantine hotels are for foreign tourists, then they can't be mixed with domestic ones. So you're not going to be able to take domestic tourists if you've got foreign tourists in quarantine. And besides, he said they can't accept guests outside of quarantine because if something happens, then it will be difficult to monitor. And also, he said they have to offer a package, whether it's 8 days or 3 days or 5 days, and he hopes it's not too long. So if the hotel is a quarantine hotel, yeah, they could, if there's a lot of people coming in, they could get business. If there's not a lot of people coming in, then they're not going to be able to take domestic tourists. That could hurt. He is another one who said, look, if they're going to be in quarantine, if there's this long quarantine, tourists are not going to come. He said the interest of guests will decrease if we have to spend too long at a hotel, because we compete with other countries such as Turkey, Dubai, the UAE, and they don't have quarantine. So he said before they leave, the PCR tests are negative, and they get here, they get to their destination, and they've been vaccinated, they're free. And what about those hotels? Well, so the hotels are going to vary from 5 stars to 3 stars with various rates for 8 days, ranging from, he said, 10 million rupiahs to 25 million rupiahs, depending on how many stars the hotel has. So he said, and I'm assuming that he means that this is what the situation is now, according to the way the article is translated. There are 4-star and 5-star, and later we'll have 3-star. So out of those 35 hotels, are they all 4 and 5-star? I don't know. I just glanced through the list that was available that I had last time a link to. I recognize the names, but they're places I would never stay in. Yeah, he said that the addition of 3 stars is because they have to have a choice for the guest. It can't be a monopoly. And so there's a range of hotels available. Now, if they add another 62 and you've got 35, okay, that's 97. That gives you a pretty big choice of hotels. Sriwijaya said, I predict, for example, a 3-star hotel can reach 10 million, 4-star 15 million, 5-star up to 20 to 25 million for 8 days. This includes breakfast, lunch, dinner, and laundry. That's a complete package. If necessary, include the PCR. Lots of stuff going on here, and a lot of talk and a lot of throwing numbers around, but nothing substantial that I've seen. I want to see something in print, something official from the government, something official from a hotel, something official from a restaurant. Right now, we're 4 days away from this planned opening, and nothing seems to be put together yet. And so I'm wondering if the 14th, if anything, is actually going to happen there, or if this is just much ado about nothing. And a short, foreigners behaving badly, and this is really, really disgusting. In Jackie Pomeroy's COVID-19 update for Bali on Facebook, this group, she posted yesterday that she'd been contacted by a number of people who were giving vaccines to the B211s, the people who were not able to get them anywhere, and that they've been subject to abuse, swearing, and threats from people that were not happy with the way things were done. And the Balinese who were involved in this said, we're doing the best we can. We don't always understand how people's names are because the names are different, and so sometimes we get things wrong, and it takes us some time. But people have been attacking us verbally. One of the places supposedly is going to close, stop dealing with foreigners, and the others are thinking about it. And this is just completely unacceptable, that here are people doing something that they don't have to do to help foreigners in Bali, and they're subject to attacks because they're working on another system, another naming system, another language that is not their first And so what? They're slow at it, and so you're going to attack them? Well, there have been hundreds of responses on social media about this, supporting the Balinese and other Indonesians who have been working to make things safe for foreigners who have not been able to get the vaccine because of their visa status, and this is what they get. You're here, behave. This is just unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Okay, it's time for a wrap up, and covered a lot today, and it's pretty thematic, all focused around the 14th and after the 14th and beyond. Our plane is going to land on the 14th with tourists from those 6 countries that I talked about in the last video. Nobody knows. Have there been any details about the visa types? Not that I've seen. What about the quarantine? So I mentioned that there's talk about 5. Well, a news article that I'm not putting in here because I've just got so much stuff said that the 5 days was decided and it is going to be announced officially in a circular soon. That's good news. Is the drop from 8 days to 5 days going to be enough to bring tourists in? Only time will tell. But it's better than 8 days. If you've listened to everything here, and I know there's a lot here to listen to, and you may be just skipping around to the parts that you find most interesting, the ministers and the players in the tourist industry in Bali have all said basically the same thing. Look, we're in a competition with other countries. We're in a competition with all the countries in Southeast Asia, and in order to bring in the tourists once everybody starts to fly. And the more convenient the process and procedures are in terms of getting here, better chance we have of getting a good share of the tourist business. And of course there's the issue of quarantines, not just here but back in people's homes. So Japan, China, South Korea, China, I think we can forget about China for now. If they're going to go back, boy, you've got a long quarantine period there. So you have these issues about people coming in here, one, and then you've got people going back, and what kind of quarantine do they have? If they've got a long quarantine there, you've got double quarantines, right? You get here, you get a quarantine, you go back, you've got a quarantine. So the quarantine issue is a problem, and that's where the travel bubbles come in, where you say if you're fully vaccinated and you test negative, okay, you're free to go. You can just go wherever you want to in here. Is it possible that people will be positive and get through this and test positive afterwards? Yeah, it is. But it looks like that's the way countries are going in the area. And so we'll have to see what the Indonesian government's going to decide about that. The Peduli Lindungi app is continuing to be developed, and there is a story that I will have on Wednesday about all the new stuff that they're adding here, bank stuff, and I don't know, everything else. I didn't take a look at the article, I just saw the headline. But the Peduli Lindungi app is going to be really important, and well, if you're a foreigner and you have not been able to access it, or if you can't figure it out because it's in Indonesian, well, maybe they will, hopefully they will put out a version that is in English as well. We'll just have to wait and see. My guess is that they definitely will put out an English version if they're expecting people to use this. And they are. And schools. I didn't mention schools last time, but my granddaughter is coming home today. She's been with her parents for the last few months because of online schooling and because it's easier for her mother to do that than it is for my wife and I. And school for her starts on Monday. Well, it starts on Tuesday for her. And they're going to be using a split schedule. So just 2 days a week in the classroom, 2 hours a day. The rest of the time is going to be online. Other schools in Badung already opened last week, and so we're getting there. Things are getting back to semi-normal, or the new normal, whatever we want to call it. So in the next few days, maybe tomorrow, we should know more about what's going to happen on the 14th or thereafter. Stay tuned for that. You know that updates here every Wednesday and Sunday, and if you haven't subscribed, you could subscribe, appreciate it, or a thumbs up. And those people that don't like this, you can give it a thumbs down too. That's up to you. That's it. for today. So stay safe, be kind to someone today. I'll see you on Wednesday. One last thing, I completely forgot about this. If you are a person that is not in the 6 countries and you are not coming in on a B211 and you just want to come in as a regular tourist, no news on that yet, but it's going to happen. We're just waiting to see how the first phase goes. So if you're coming from anywhere else in the world, hang in there. And thanks for viewing. See you next time.